All right, what's up, guys? Good evening here on the East Coast. This is Brandon Choi, host and co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. And just as you saw with our promo post, we have a special guest joining us tonight. So give me one moment while I introduce them on, okay? So I want to welcome filmmaker John Woodruff. What's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm good. How you doing, Brandon?
I'm all right. I'm all right. So first off, thanks so much for coming on and talking about Animal Among Us. So just to hit the ground running, can you talk about how you got involved with this picture?
Yeah, for sure. So a couple of years ago, after I moved out to LA, I was working for a former studio head, and through him, I was able to do a lot of screenwriting consultations. So people were always sending me scripts, and I would kind of just help them through the development process. Because obviously, it's always good to get eyes on your work. You know what I mean? Get a different opinion. So a mutual friend introduced me to someone, and they had met another someone who had this script they were working on, which happened to be Animal Among Us. And so they started asking me for feedback on it, and I started giving them feedback. Really loved the concept, and the noting process was going very well. So it wasn't too long before they met up with me and asked me if I might be interested in joining them on the project as a producer. So I definitely was, and that's kind of how I became involved from a production perspective. And then as we got closer to the project, it just made sense with our budgetary level and my level of experience and involvement for me to go ahead and direct it too. So kind of worked out in that way.
All right, awesome. And as you said, in talking about the various elements in this film, there are some tropes that you would notice in this type of film in terms of genre. So, can you talk a bit about putting those pieces together and executing it in a way where it was still familiar, but there still were some elements that made it unique.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that was one of the interesting things about the script, and one of the things that really caught my attention about it was Jonathan Murphy, who wrote it. He had come up with this kind of clever way to put a new spin and kind of a new twist on a lot of the standard tropes. So I felt like it could really appeal to your typical genre audience, but I also felt like it had the ability to kind of like stick out like in the crowd. And I think that that's one of the biggest challenges in this day and age is like, okay, well, how do you like appease like the expectations with a film in a genre that's so oversaturated, but how do you do something a little bit different? So for us, of course, a few of like the standard elements, like isolating your main character, the fear of the unknown, kind of like your ingenue versus like your leading man, like a lot of those elements were like already there and in place. Kind of your diversions as far as like the whodunit aspect was there, the mysterious aspect was there. But then what we kind of did was we kind of tried to play into a lot of those very standard fare cliches that you see in horror films. And right when we get to that point of a cliche, we would try to like take a left-hand turn. So just to kind of keep the audience on their toes, to kind of keep it a little bit unexpected. So basically the way we navigated it was playing to those tropes, walking you right up to the line to where you think you know what's going to happen, and then taking a severe left turn. And that was kind of our philosophy and strategy.
Gotcha. And to speak to that further, for those, I won't spoil it. I've seen the film, but I won't spoil what happens in this film. And talking about the curveball that happens, it's very in you discussing turning a lot of those expectations on its head. It's very tempting to jump right into uh, kind of showing what elements are happening behind the scenes. So can you talk a bit about trying to find that fine line of still having the story play out, but not really being tempted to kind of rush right into what's really going on?
Yeah, so it's funny because it's like you said, it's like that's kind of one of the things that you want to talk about in the film. So
Yeah,
it's
you want to
also
jump right into it, right?
yeah, so it's also one of the things that like as a filmmaker you want to get into too, because you're like, oh man, we're setting this thing up. And I'll tell you, like,
Right.
it's a precarious balance because like my fear with the film, and this has happened, was just that like I didn't want people to feel cheated. I didn't want people to feel like there was like the unexpected just for the sake of the unexpected. Like I wanted to feel like we didn't break the rules. Like we played by the rules, we set this thing up, and though it might be unexpected, it's still fair, and hopefully it's gratifying, you know? So kind of on a scene by scene basis, the way we handled it was always asking that question of like, hey, are we playing within the bounds of the reality that we've established? Like, are we playing truthfully to these characters and the circumstances that they're in? Or are we trying to like manipulate the scenes to like serve this plot point, this particular like gimmick or idea? And I think, again, that as a writer, I think Jonathan did a really great job of playing true to the characters and their plight and kind of which each character was going through in the film. And I think the actors did a great job with it as well, because one of my main things in directing them was always just like, look, you don't know you're in a horror film. You don't know things are about to go the way they're about to go. You're actually probably kind of happy in this circumstance. So just play it light and cool and real natural like, and let's like just kind of let it unfold naturally, you know?
Yeah, and I was gonna say to talk further to that. It's fascinating what you were talking about, like with the actors themselves in your cast, because in that same regard, there are a lot of revelations that come out by the end, and it's really fascinating, and possibly in doing it as a rewatch of what was possibly there that you might have missed, and it is very interesting to play that, and to kind of play or portray that journey. So
yeah, and I'm glad you picked up on that, and I would be really interested to hear what you would think of it on a second viewing, because like there are a lot of little hints in there. There's a lot of like nods to films from like, you know, the late 70s and early era that the film was inspired by and play very close to that kind of like sub genre of the bloody camp film. And then, yeah, just from a character perspective, they each have their little nuances or their little moments that kind of, you know, plant the seeds for what comes later in the film, so that it doesn't just hit you out of left field, but so that you're kind of already like, even if it's subconsciously, hopefully putting those pieces together so that when like these revelations do start to occur, you're with it. You know, again, you don't feel like it was just some sleight of hand magic trick that came out of nowhere. And I think that the actors did a very good job, and I think the editor did a very good job of setting that up and kind of, you know, laying those little breadcrumbs out throughout the plot. I think on a second watch, you know, like we tested the film for audiences. I watched the film so many times before we finalized that it was painful. Just being like, are we giving too much away here? Are we being too cryptic? Is it enough? Like we want the audience to be able to think and interpret things for themselves, but we don't want it to be confusing. So, you know, hopefully we found that finite line.
definitely, and to speak to that, talking to how exciting it is to vicariously observe other people watch that journey too. How has that been also, of them seeing the journey of this story unfold?
Yeah, that's a mind twist. And especially because like I've watched people watch the film in so many different like capacities and incarnations. So I'll never forget like when we got our first cut together and I did the initial string out with one of my really close friends. And we did it in Colorado, and just so we could be kind of isolated and stuff, you know. So we're like up in the mountains, just like cutting on this thing, whatever. And I had some people out here in LA that were a lot more experienced than me that were willing to take a look at the cut of the film to you know, to kind of give us some feedback. So like I brought the film out and I had these people come out and watch it, and man, they just like shredded it. You know, they just like ripped it apart. But they were like, look, you've got a movie here. Like you've got something here. They're like, it's just not there yet. So you go from that experience through all of like the feedback and the notes and the different cuts, and then we start testing it for people. So we tested it at Horror Hound in Cincinnati a couple years ago, and going into that, it was still a rough cut. Like we didn't have picture locked, we didn't have color, we had a temp music track. So going into that, you know, I'm kind of like, yeah, I don't really know how people are going to react to this. Like I tested it for some individuals, and you know, overall the feedback was good. Overall, they seemed to be with it, but inevitably I knew all of them. You know, it was either like my friends that were in the industry, friends that weren't in the industry. So it'd never been put up in front of an unbiased audience. But man, when we put it up at Horror Hound, like you could feel the energy in the room. They gave us a Friday night slot. It's like people were laughing in the right places. People were like gasping. People were making comments. You know, it's like, so it was really fun. So at that point, I felt comfortable locking picture and finalizing the film. And then now, as it's been out, the thing that's like got me was just like how divisive the film is. Like I didn't expect that. And people, you know, it's like there are people who are like, this is really cool. Like you guys did something different. We respect it. We like it. And then there are people that are just like, this is horrible. And they're just not with it. You know, it's like I've read reviews where people were like, oh man, like this all makes sense and it's so intelligently done and it's so unique. And then you've got the other review that's just like, what are these guys doing? Like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. And so I never expected the film to be so divisive. And at first it was like a super huge mind trip because of course, like you don't make something because you want people to hate it, right? You make it because you want them to enjoy it. So you're kind of sitting there like, wow, I just did not think that this was going to be a divisive film. But then, you know, after a while, like you kind of find like the compliment in that because people are having conversations about it and people do have differing opinions about it. And that's actually like a really cool thing, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. So with that being said, you know, you're still basically playing out the run of this film. Uh, can you? Is it perhaps too early to talk about, you know, perhaps what you already have generating right now, or are you taking a break? You know, with the undertaking that this film was before moving on to the next thing. What's up
Yeah,
next?
no, man, not too early to talk about that at all. I think that in this day and age, everything is moving so fast that you always have to be thinking like 2 or 3 moves ahead. Even when you're making the film, you know? Yeah, it's like you kind of have to try to reverse engineer it. It's like, well, what's the trend going to be like when this is finished and when it's ready to come out? So I was working on a film that I had been calling Fear the Dead. Super excited about it, very grounded in like the horror arena. Um, but when the pandemic hit, you know, and we start to see like the production regulations and restrictions and the guidelines, and then we start to see like how SAG is navigating things, I kind of realized that it just required a little bit too many hands on deck to be able to potentially do at this time. So I actually kind of like shifted gears, and I'd had this other idea in the back of my head that I'd kind of been kicking around, and moving into this like global crisis pandemic situation we're in, it kind of forced me to like reinvestigate that. And in all actuality, I've been working through this whole ordeal, like on developing this project. And honestly, about 20 minutes before you and I jumped on here, I was just like pecking away at the script, you know, and really excited about it. I've got the initial complete beat sheet and outline done, and I'm just like breaking into the first draft of the script. I've got some really strong support from people that helped us on the Animal team and some people that were excited about what we've done with Animal. So just trying to like, you know, adapt and evolve and push through, which all filmmaking is creative problem solving. And it's just obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. So you can look at all of this stuff either as like an inhibitor, or you can look at it as an opportunity. So just trying to like work towards that opportunity, you know?
And I was going to say that you actually answered it. I was going to ask if you were planning to, you know, re-collaborate with a lot of the team with Animal, but already gave me an idea. With that being said, before I let you go, John, I want to say thank you so much for talking about Animal Among Us. But before I let you go, can you talk about where folks can find you and, you know, talking about those future projects?
Yeah, for sure. So you can find me on Instagram at the Real John Woodruff. You can find me on Facebook here at the John Woodruff. And then the film's pretty accessible. Our distributor did a great job for us. So if you Google it, it'll pop right up. But it just hit Tubi and it just hit Amazon Prime, so you can watch it for free on any of those places. And then it was on Dish and Direct and Fandango and Vudu and Google Play and YouTube and Xbox and the whole kind of ran the whole gamut. So pretty accessible. So yeah, you can find it anywhere. And if you want to let me know what you think about it or drop me a start a dialogue on it, you know, it's like, just hit me up on Facebook, hit me up on Instagram. The film has pages on each of those sites as well. So yeah, we'll be able to get in touch there and see what you think.
All right, guys. Well, there you guys have it. John, again, I want to thank you for coming on, talking about the film. I'm your host, Brandon Troy. As always, guys, for those of you that are watching, you can find us on Facebook, which you are watching now, obviously, but you can also find us on Instagram at Movers Shakers Unlimited, on Twitter at Move and Shake UNLTD. You can find me on Twitter at Brandon Troy ENT and Instagram at Brandon Troy _ENT. So again, there you guys have it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be safe out there, and I'll see you soon. Bye.